You know, when you buy a ticket to see a stage magician, there's this very specific unspoken contract you're basically signing.
Right. You know you're going to be lied to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're paying for the privilege of it. But the thing is, the real trick is never what's actually happening right there in the spotlight.
Yeah, I mean, the spotlight is really just it's a stress test for your attention.
Yeah.
So the flashing lights, the glamorous assistants, the sudden burst of smoke.
Oh, yeah, the classic misdirection.
Right. It's all engineered to make you look exactly where the magician wants you to look.
Hmm.
All while the actual mechanics of the illusion are, well, they're quietly taking place in the dark.
And we accept that dynamic, because it's entertainment, it's fun.
Yeah.
But what happens when that exact same architecture, the spotlight, the shadow, that meticulously orchestrated distraction, what happens when that gets applied to the highest levels of global power?
That is where it gets deeply, deeply unsettling.
It really does. So today, for this deep dive, we are exploring a really dark thematic juxtaposition. We're looking at a man who essentially structured reality for the global elite through psychological manipulation, leverage, and these really elaborate God games.
A man we're going to refer to today as the Magus.
Right. Though, obviously, the public knows him as Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. And our mission here is to unpack the statistical and philosophical probabilities surrounding his end.
Because it's quite the end.
It is. You have a man holding the most catastrophic secrets of the modern power structure, and he dies entirely alone in a highly monitored, squalid federal prison cell.
Which is just bizarre when you think about it.
Utterly bizarre. So we're asking, does that lonely death prove he was ultimately just a disposable pawn?
Like, just thrown away.
Right. Or is a murky, unmonitored death in a cell exactly the kind of ultimate psychological smokescreen a true mastermind would orchestrate to just escape the board entirely?
Wow. Okay, so just a quick note to you, the listener, before we really jump in here. We are analyzing some highly charged theories today.
Very charged.
Yeah, based on a stack of fascinating source material. This includes recently leaked emails, literary excerpts, and historical blueprints regarding some very controversial figures.
And we should be clear, we aren't here to confirm these theories.
No, not at all. Nor are we taking any political sides. Our goal is strictly to unpack the complex philosophy, the psychology of power, and, the historical precedents laid out in these documents.
We're just following the arguments where they lead.
Exactly. So, which means we really need to start by understanding the psychological framework this man actually operated within.
Yeah, because we're synthesizing 3 specific sources today. But the absolute foundation is John Fowles' classic 1965 psychological novel, The Magus.
Such an intense book.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because to understand the end of the game, you have to understand how the Magus actually plays it.
Right. And the book itself is incredibly unsettling. It follows this somewhat cynical young Englishman named Nicholas Earth. And he takes this teaching job on a really remote, isolated Greek island. And while he's there, he just gets pulled into the orbit of this reclusive, just unimaginably wealthy man named Maurice Conchis.
And Conchis is, he's the absolute archetype of the puppet master. He doesn't just host Nicholas for dinner or whatever.
No, it's way more than that.
He subjects him to what Fowles coined a God game. And this isn't just a simple parlor trick.
Right.
Conchis orchestrates an elaborate, totally immersive alternate reality. He's staging mythological events, hiring actors to play these bizarre and contradictory roles, and he puts Nicholas in these impossible psychological double binds.
It's like he's totally trapped.
He is. The environment is manipulated so completely and so ruthlessly that Nicholas, eventually, he just cannot trust his own senses.
Or his memory, or even his own sanity.
Exactly. Conchis is the director, and he essentially forces everyone around him to be actors in a play they don't even realize they're starring in.
And the psychological capture there is what really stands out to me. Like, it's not about the money for Conchis.
No, the money is just the tool.
Right. It's really about rewriting the baseline of reality for another human being. And the reason this specific 1965 novel is so critical to our deep dive today is because of a specific leaked email.
Yeah, this is the wild part.
It was sent to Jeffrey Epstein on May 18th, 2011. An associate writes to him, and I'm quoting here, "Thank you for the reading assignment. It is funny that you advise me books because when we were talking on Saturday, you made me think about one of my most favorite books, The Magus of John Fowles. Did you read it? You remind me of the Magus."
It's a truly remarkable piece of documentary evidence.
It's literally spelling it out.
Exactly. This isn't an outsider observing him from afar and theorizing. This is his own inner circle, mapping his behavior directly onto Maurice Conchis.
That's chilling.
It is. And the email goes on to discuss the high aesthetics of the book, contrasting it with Nabokov, and then it casually references the exploits of playboys in London.
Just totally casual.
Right. It's this highly cultured, deeply cynical exchange that, well, it really reveals the operating system of his entire network.
Right. And when you look at the broader context of those leaked emails, the sheer scale of the real-world God game really comes into focus.
Oh, entirely.
Because we see messages praising meetings with Woody Allen, people feeling, quote, lucky like Bill Gates.
Right alongside just mundane requests for passport renewals.
Yeah, and highly sensitive subject lines that are flagged with DOJ 9 and DOJ 10. I mean, this is a man who treated billionaires, politicians, cultural icons, literally just as pieces on his personal chessboard.
And I think it perfectly illustrates how leverage masquerades as hospitality.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because the philosophy of the Magus dictates that you bring powerful people into an environment you entirely control.
Like a private island.
Right, or a private townhouse.
Yeah.
And then you systematically strip away their normal reality. You make them complicit in your world.
So they're part of the illusion.
Exactly. The leverage isn't just, a hidden camera in a bedroom.
Which people always assume.
Right. But the real leverage is that they participated in the God game at all. They willingly surrendered their reality to his.
Okay, but wait. I am struggling with the leap here a little bit.
Okay, how so?
Well, pulling strings at a Manhattan dinner party or, isolating someone on your own private island where you pay all the staff, that's one thing. That is psychological dominance, sure.
Right.
But when the FBI literally kicks down your door, I mean, the God game is over, right? When the state removes you from your customized environment and shoves you into a concrete box, the illusion shatters.
You'd think so.
I mean, you can't psychologically manipulate a cinder block wall.
Well, see, that assumes the Magus views power geographically.
Geographically, what do you mean?
Meaning tied to a specific location he physically owns. But a true Magus views power relationally. Control is not just some tool he picks up and puts down when it's convenient. It's his core identity. If the parameters shift, like, say, moving from an island to a cell, the game doesn't actually stop. He simply incorporates the walls closing in as a new variable in his script.
Huh. So he just adapts the illusion.
Exactly. When a mastermind is cornered, they do not rely on the conventional rules of reality. Why would they? They have spent their entire life subverting them.
Wow. Which I guess brings us to the real-world mechanics of how cornered elites actually operate.
Yes, exactly.
Because if a Magus relies on immense leverage, history actually shows us that the illusion just becomes, militarized.
Right.
The normal rules of gravity and consequence, they're just suspended for a certain class of people.
They absolutely are.
Which means we really have to look at the essay in our sources today, the one titled The Grand Sasso Blueprint.
Yeah, this essay draws a really fascinating historical parallel to the rescue of Benito Mussolini on September 12, 1943.
Right in the middle of the war.
Exactly. Mussolini had been deposed, arrested, and he was being held at the Hotel Campo Imperatore.
And it is so vital to understand the geography of this prison. It wasn't just a regular jail. It was essentially a fortress in the clouds.
Literally.
It sat on a 2,112-meter high plateau in the Apennine Mountains. You could only reach it by a single heavily monitored cable car.
And he was guarded by elite, heavily armed carabinieri.
Right. So by every conventional military standard you could think of, a rescue mission was a physical impossibility.
But that's the thing. Conventional military standards only apply to conventional targets.
Okay, fair.
Hitler ordered the extraction, and this Austrian commando named Otto Skorzeny, he bypassed the physics problem entirely through sheer audacity.
You use gliders, right?
Yes, 10 DFS 230 gliders.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't land normally on a mountain.
Right, there's no runway.
Exactly. So Skorzeny ordered his pilots to deliberately crash land onto this tiny, steep, rocky ski slope right outside the hotel doors.
The psychological warfare of that specific moment is just staggering. I mean, his glider skids to a stop just meters from the entrance.
And you'd expect a massive firefight.
Exactly. But Skorzeny doesn't just come out guns blazing. He brought along a kidnapped Italian general, Fernando Saletti.
Right.
And he forces this general to walk in front screaming, "Don't shoot!" at the totally confused Italian guards.
Which completely paralyzed the defenders. The extraction took 12 minutes.
12 minutes.
12 minutes and 0 shots were fired. Mussolini walked out entirely untouched.
And the getaway itself was just as insane. They overloaded this tiny reconnaissance plane and they literally plunged off a sheer 1,000-foot cliff just to gain enough flying speed in the downdraft.
It was a bloodless extraction executed under extreme geographical and military surveillance.
Okay, I have to push back here, though, because I see the parallel. But landing a glider on a mountain in a 1943 war zone is one thing.
Sure.
The whole world was already chaotic. But smuggling a globally recognized, incredibly high-profile financial criminal out of the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan in 2019.
You think it's a stretch?
It's a completely different universe. You can't exactly crash a glider into a federal holding facility in New York.
Well, you're looking at the glider, not the mechanism.
Okay, explain that.
The essay's argument is really about the translation of power and the disparity of resources. Think about it. If a mid-level Nazi commando with 1943 technology,
So no satellites, no digital communications.
no AI, nothing. If he could orchestrate a bloodless extraction from an impossible mountaintop fortress, what can a 21st century intelligence-linked network achieve with modern asymmetric tools?
Ah, I see. So the blueprint isn't physical. It's not about actual plains and cliffs.
No, not at all.
It's about bypassing impossible surveillance through overwhelming, unexpected technological leverage.
Precisely. The blueprint dictates that you don't fight the guards physically. You rewrite the parameters of the prison itself.
Wow. Which sets up the absolute core debate of this deep dive.
It does.
When the modern Magus was sitting in that squalid cell, did he face a pathetic, isolated end, or was his death a digital age Grand Sasso?
It's the ultimate question.
Let's weigh the two realities, starting with the cold, hard logic of what we're calling the disposable pawn theory.
So the disposable pawn theory is deeply rooted in basic risk management.
Right.
The Magus had become a catastrophic liability to the global power structure. I mean, he held the secrets of the world's elite, the exact billionaires, politicians, and royals we saw casually mentioned in his emails.
Right, he knew everything.
Statistically and philosophically, it is entirely probable that once he was trapped in the spotlight, his powerful friends just ran a cold cost-benefit analysis.
And the math wasn't in his favor.
Exactly. They decided the risk of extracting him was far higher than the risk of just ensuring his silence. So they cut the cord. The leverage failed him, and he was left to hang.
It is a deeply pathetic irony, honestly. A man who spent decades believing he was the grand player pulling all the strings, realizing in his final moments that he was just a piece on the board the entire time.
Discarded like trash.
Yeah. But then, the essay presents the alternative, the modern extraction theory.
Which is where things get really complex.
Because if you update the Grand Sasso Blueprint for 2019, how do you actually pull it off in Lower Manhattan?
Well, according to the essay, the modern tools are totally invisible, but they are far more insidious. You don't send commandos to cut telephone lines.
No, obviously not.
Instead, you introduce conveniently timed malfunctions into the closed-circuit security cameras. You don't physically overpower the carabinieri.
Right, you just utilize falsified guard logs and conveniently sleeping corrections officers.
Exactly. But the most vital modern upgrade is the getaway vehicle itself.
Because you can't jump off a cliff in an overloaded plane.
Right. In 1943, you needed a plane. Today, what you need is a propaganda machine.
The media layer. That's fascinating. The essay specifically details these disinformation networks, pointing to groups like Team Jorge.
Right, the Israeli-linked outfit.
Yeah, that was exposed for running global manipulation campaigns. And they don't just use, simple Twitter bots. They spin up thousands of synthetic personas with deep, complex backstories, credit cards, social histories.
And they use them to completely hijack consensus reality.
Exactly. They just flood the algorithmic zone.
Right. Within hours, they saturate the internet with suicide memes and these perfectly conclusive narratives, basically burying any actual investigative anomalies under an absolute mountain of noise.
It's overwhelming by design.
And you use synthetic AI deepfakes and, say, compliant forensic pathologists to offer what the essay terms synthetic autopsy ambiguities.
Which is where it gets incredibly dark. The essay actually brings up the debate over the broken hyoid bone.
Yes, a crucial detail.
For context for you listening, breaking the hyoid bone in the neck is far more statistically common in a strangulation homicide than it is in a hanging suicide.
Right.
But the point the essay makes is that the intelligence network actually wants that anomaly in the press.
Absolutely. Because it acts as algorithmic distraction.
Oh, I see.
Think about it. If the entire public is fiercely debating the medical pathology of a hyoid bone, What are they not asking?
They're not asking how the camera is magically turned off.
Exactly. They're arguing over the method of death, which completely distracts from the possibility of an extraction. The noise itself is the getaway plane.
That is the ultimate magic trick, like we were talking about at the start. Scorzini's glider was loud, it was visible. The modern extraction is completely silent. It's just a file-corrupted message and a totally chaotic 24-hour news cycle that just exhausts the public.
It wears them down until they accept it.
But, okay, here is the flaw in the extraction theory, to me at least. Why would the elite even bother?
Why save him?
Yeah. If he is such a huge liability, why not just assassinate him in the cell? Why orchestrate a wildly complex extraction? That seems unnecessarily risky.
Because of the philosophical nature of loyalty in that specific echelon of power, a true Magus anticipates betrayal.
He knows they'll turn on him.
He knows his network absolutely won't save him out of loyalty or friendship. Those don't exist here. He relies on his client leverage files, the decades of gathered, meticulously cataloged blackmail.
Wow.
But he doesn't use those files to politely request a rescue. He uses them as a dead man's switch.
An automated release.
Yes, an automated release of catastrophic secrets if he isn't safely removed from the board. It is literally a gun to the head of the global establishment. He doesn't ask for the extraction, he forces it.
Man, okay, to really understand if he possessed the psychological framework to pull off something so theatrical, we have to go back to the literal operating manual he was reading.
We have to look at Fowles.
Right. We have to look at how John Fowles wrote the blueprint.
Deep in the Magus, Maurice Conchis recounts a story from his past during World War II.
Right.
His Greek island is occupied by the Germans. And Conchis, who is acting as the local mayor, is ordered by this sadistic Nazi commander named Wimmel to execute 2 Greek guerrillas.
And Wimmel gives him this completely impossible, horrific choice. If Conchis refuses to execute the 2 men, Wimmel is going to execute Conchis alongside 80 innocent village hostages.
It is the ultimate stress test of reality and morality. But Conchis refuses the order. He realizes that refusing to participate in the horror is his only remaining agency. So Wimmel orders the execution. Conchis is lined up against the wall. The firing squad shoots. He falls to the ground, totally covered in blood.
But he survives.
He survives the volley. He faints. The soldiers are briefly distracted, and he is secretly carried away by his servants and this compliant doctor.
But surviving the actual bullets isn't the real escape.
No, not at all.
The actual escape requires bureaucratic manipulation. Because to ensure the Nazis never come looking for him again, his network buries a fake empty coffin in his place.
The empty coffin is such a profound concept in this context.
It really is. In modern terms, it acts like a zero-day exploit in a software system.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to phrase it.
It's an invisible backdoor left completely open, but it's wrapped in official, untouchable code.
And Fowles actually takes it a step further, because a sympathetic German officer forges an official, typed military report.
Which changes everything.
It does. This forged paperwork is entered into the bureaucratic record, making it an absolute, verifiable historical fact that Maurice Conchis died that day against the wall.
Wow.
Conchis uses a staged death, psychological camouflage, and the sheer weight of official paperwork to just slip off the board entirely.
The symmetry there is genuinely chilling. The exact book that Epstein's inner circle tells him he perfectly embodies, it literally features a mastermind who survives execution by faking his death.
Burying an empty coffin.
Yes, and using forged official reports to cover his tracks.
It's almost too perfect.
It is. When you synthesize that literary blueprint with the Grand Sasso historical precedent, it fundamentally changes how you view that prison cell in Manhattan.
It really does. Because for a man who lived his entire life blurring the lines of reality and treating powerful people as unwitting actors, a murky, unmonitored death in a cell isn't pathetic at all.
It's his masterpiece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The lonely death is the exact psychological smokescreen required. Think about the public psychology here. If he dies publicly in a massive trial, there's a huge unsealed record. If he is assassinated publicly, there is an endless, messy investigation.
Right. Too many loose ends.
But if he commits suicide in a lonely, squalid cell, the narrative is perfectly neat. It satisfies the public's deep, almost desperate desire for a moralistic, pathetic end to a monstrous man.
Right. The public desperately wants to believe he died alone and miserable.
And the Magus uses our own moral desire for justice as the camouflage for his Grand Sasso extraction.
Oh, wow. So we are left looking at 2 very conflicting realities. On one hand, you have the cold statistics of the disposable pawn,
Right.
a man who gathered the darkest secrets of the global elite, only to discover that when the system was truly threatened, he was just a liability, the ultimate god game player, discarded like trash by the real power brokers and left to rot in a cold cell while the world just moved on.
A fitting end, really.
But on the other hand, you have the modern Grand Sasso extraction, a bloodless, highly technical rescue orchestrated by a Magus who used a dead man's switch to force the world's intelligence networks into faking his death.
It's entirely plausible within his framework.
A man who utilized the cover of a squalid cell, corrupted cameras, and a compliant, noise-generating media machine to perform his final vanishing act.
It really requires us to question our assumptions about the architecture of power. We instinctively assume that the state system is always stronger than the individual.
Right, because that's what we're taught.
But the philosophy of the Magus, combined with the reality of asymmetrical leverage, it suggests that those dynamics can be entirely inverted in the shadows.
Exactly, which is why I really want you to consider your own media consumption today. When you read a neat official narrative about the fall of a really powerful person, when the cameras conveniently malfunction, the logs are conveniently lost, and the whole story is just tied up with a bow in 24 hours, are you actually looking at objective reality?
Or are you just a spectator in a highly funded, meticulously staged God game?
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought. If a true Magus fakes his death, buries an empty coffin, and escapes the board, his very nature dictates that he cannot just stop playing the game.
No, he doesn't retire quietly to a beach.
He simply builds a new, invisible theater.
The game is his only reality.
Right. So the real question isn't just how he escaped. It's where is he directing the play from right now?
And how would we even know if we've already been cast in his sequel?
Exactly, because remember, when you go to see a stage magician, the real trick is never what is happening right there in the spotlight.
It is always what is happening in the dark.
And we only notice the shadows when we finally stop staring at the stage.